Wait a minute! Franky! That's it! That's the whole video! Franky! Super! How could I have forgotten about my favorite Straw Hat? He's the only one that isn't in the primordial world or isn't chained up right now. Franky is gonna save the day. Let's talk about why. How do you... Oh, that's how you do it. Okay. So yeah, hey everybody, Teching here. I could have sworn I was missing a Straw Hat, right? It's like, okay, Luffy, Zoro, Sanji are with Hiruden's group and Loki's group. Chopper is now down there as well. And then you have Nami, Jinbei, Brook, and Usopp that are all chained up with Gunko's ability, the arrows. And I'm like, well, I guess all the Straw Hats are taken care of. And I'm like, wait a minute. There's somebody we're missing. It's Franky. Okay, Franky was over with Ripley getting the tour of the Yggdrasil tree, of the Atomwood tree, met up with Bonnie and Lilith, who were in the facility that we'll just be calling now the facility. And then that's when all of the nightmare creatures attacked, like the angry storm cloud, and like Franky defeated the storm cloud, and then they all go rushing off, I think to help the giant warrior pirates ship, the Great Eric, that crashed, and then Gabon ran ahead to go save Colin, and then was defeated, and then Robin was also defeated, and also chained up now. And so yeah, now the only Straw Hat that's up in the sun layer that can actually do stuff like right now, because like Luffy's group's gonna take a moment to get up there, I guess, unless Loki's devil fruit ability is like a teleportation power. It's like, hey everybody, let me go, I ate a legendary devil fruit that allows me to teleport anywhere in the world at any given time, let's just go. It's like the upgraded version of the warp fruit. But aside from that being the case, which I don't think that is the case, what could Franky do? Franky, I mean, like, look, okay, I know we've talked about this being Usopp's arc. I'm kind of just throwing that on a shelf right now. I haven't completely given up on it, but it's sort of like that penguin toy at the beginning of Toy Story 2. Remember the penguin toy? You know, he couldn't squeak anymore. You know, remember that guy? Yeah, he's all dusty. Yeah, we'll just put Usopp up on the shelf there for a little while, right? I had high hopes for Robin, and honestly, Robin did pretty good considering that she could not injure Sommers in any way. She didn't have any access to armament hockey or conqueror's hockey or anything like that. She had a pretty good plan on eliminating Sommers, or at least pushing him off the side of the tree to get them out of the range of the devil fruit ability, all right? She utilized her power well, as best as she could. Unfortunately, it just didn't work out, and she ended up getting chained up. And she's actually trying to force her way out of the thorns right now, so she might be able to escape on her own. But it was made very clear that Gunko's arrows that are tying up the rest of the Straw Hats, even Jinbei with his mighty fishman strength, she can't just, like, you know, cut that with a knife or just rip it apart. You know, it's going to require something else to break through that. Maybe cyborg level strength. I mean, I don't think so. I mean, if Jinbei can't brute force his way out of those bindings, I doubt Franky would be able to as well. But hey, Franky at least has 2 free arms, 2 free legs. He has a beard now. He has Franky with a beard is like 10 times as strong as he used to be. All right. So, we know Ripley is on her way to go save Colin because she'd heard that her husband Gabon was defeated, and she's like, oh, that doesn't sound right, but okay, Colin, I'm gonna come and save you. And Franky's with her right there, okay? So Franky, let's say, shows up, and there is one scene that I would really like to see involving Franky. Actually, 2. If we're going to have a moment where maybe we need a little bit more time to stall everything out before we really get to Luffy's group arriving, I don't want to put, like, Franky to the level of just like, well, he's there to stall, you know, the God's Knights for 5 seconds. Actually, you know what? This is really dumb, but let's go with it, all right? This is really stupid, but let's roll with it, okay? You have Emu, the supreme devil lord of the entire world, right? Raising an army of evil giants. Dory and Bragi have been Domi reversied, right? Along with a bunch of other of the giant warrior pirates. You have giant nightmare creatures and dragons stomping through the island. You have Killingham. You have Sommers there. and Emu is about to like, all right, we will now invade all of the villages in Elbaf and subjugate all of the giants. And then Franky all of a sudden appears in front of Emu. And Franky's like, hey there, check this out. And then Franky just does a stupid dance right in front of Emu. And Emu is so perplexed by this, actually manages to distract them for like, I don't know, a minute or so, long enough for Luffy's group to arrive from the primordial world. And Franky busts out all of his best dance moves, ladies and gentlemen. He's doing the poses. He's like, hey, check it out, I have nipple lights. And he starts turning on his nipple lights, and Emu is just like, like Emu, I think like they normally would be like, out of my way, you commoner, you are nothing, you are so beneath me. But like Franky is just so weird and his body is so strange. I think Emu would actually stall out for a moment. Like Emu's brain even would be like, huh? It's like the scene in Naruto when, like, in the final, remember that? The final battle when Naruto and Sasuke were fighting Kaguya? Spoilers for the end of Naruto, which was, like, over 10 years ago. Or, oh my god. The end of Naruto was over. Yeah, it was 2014. It was November of 2014. That was over 10 years ago Naruto ended? What? Alright, anyway, remember the final battle with Kaguya? Like, this is like, you know, planet-level threats at this point, and then Naruto uses the reverse harem jutsu, and that actually manages to surprise Kaguya for, like, enough seconds for them to get an attack out on her. You know, like, it might be something like that. I don't know. But there is another scene. There is another scene I would really like to see Franky against Sommers, and this is why, okay? So, Sommers is immortal. He can regenerate. Even what Gabon did to him, he could still regenerate, all right? There's probably some trick to bypass that. I mean, we saw Gabon do that, but even then, his hand was coming back. So, he is healed now at this point, right? And he's listening to Emu, and he's following the orders and everything like that. I would love to see Franky show up to try to rescue the rest of the Straw Hats to get them out of the arrow, right? Sommers sees Franky trying to help him, and he's like, oh, another Straw Hat worming his way around here. We forgot about you. And so Sommers tries to attack Franky. Franky responds by just unloading weapons left into Sommers. Just like, it's like, hey, back off. He just unloads into Sommers, right? And just Sommers gets, like, you know, a bunch of bullet holes blasted in him. Kind of like the scene when Usopp used the skull bomb grass on Gunko, right? So, like, the top half of Sommers' body is just obliterated. And then Franky goes back to be like, man, what was with that guy? That guy's crazy, right? And he tries to help the Straw Hats. And then Sommers begins to regenerate. It's like, it is useless. I am immortal. You cannot hope to... Oh, what the hell? You're back again? And then Franky just keeps unloading, just jackhammering Sommers with endless amounts of firepower, right? Like, he just bombards him with weapons left. He regenerates, shoots him again, regenerates, shoots him again. And, like, Sommers doesn't even have, like... It kind of, like, stun locks him, you know? I don't know if that's how it works, but, like, let's have that be how it works. Just stun lock the God's Knights. There's a brief moment of only like a couple of seconds where they are regenerating, so they can't really move or use Devil Fruit abilities or anything like that. Maybe it's like just a fraction of a second, and Franky just every single moment they regenerate just constantly unloads more and more firepower into them. When he runs out of bullets, he uses those, like, you know, RPG things. When he runs out of those, he uses his cannons. When he runs out of those, he uses his fire breath. When he runs out of that, he uses his laser beam. You know what I mean? It just constantly just hitting the God's Knights, stun locking them so they can regenerate, but they're stalled out enough that Franky could maybe do something and help the Straw Hats. Once again, unless Franky has some really special tool on him, if you want to throw in a little bit of a retcon that Franky off-screen picked up any Sea Prism weaponry at Wano or anything at Egghead, like, that's okay to do that right now. I'd be okay with that. Like, Franky shows up to the battle, and he's like, Franky, you can't break these bounds. They're made by Devil Fruit powers. And Franky's like, don't worry, Jinbei. When we were at Wano, I picked up a bunch of Sea Prism metal, and I was able to shape it into a knife. You know what? It makes sense. It happened off screen, and I never mentioned it up until now, but I have Sea Prism weaponry. He busts out the C Prism like brass knuckles and just punches out Killingham. Probably would do something. I don't know. I made a whole video about that, so you go check that out. But I'm still a little bit like, Franky should have gotten some serious upgrades from Wano. He should at least have some C Prism bullets or a gauntlet to strap to his arm to punch Devil Fruit users with. He should at least have that much, right? It's okay if you just want to say that he has that, Oda. I'd be all right with that. It's fine. Please give Franky an upgrade. Here's the other option. Okay, so in the last review, I mentioned that, you know, off to the side of the Straw Hats, there was like a figure that it seemed to be moving towards them, and I thought that that might have been Bonnie, like, sneaking over to try to help the Straw Hats, right? So a lot of people pointed out that actually was probably Usopp. So what happened was Usopp did not get freed. He just kind of like, you know, he's all bound up with the arrows. He just kind of like rolled away from the group to get a better look at Dory and Broggy, because Dory and Broggy were stomping around as evil giants in the background, and Usopp had that line in the last chapter where he's like, Dory, Broggy, what happened to you? What about your warrior pride? So that was probably just Usopp rolling away to get a better view. But last time we saw Lilith and Bonnie, they were with Ripley and Franky. So Franky showing up and then like, hey, don't worry about the God's Knights. I'll take care of him. And then Bonnie can go over. Bonnie utilizing her Devil Fruit ability to help the Straw Hats. That actually makes a lot of sense. Either she can use her ability on the arrows themselves to age them, and if that doesn't work, she can actually use her ability, a lot of people brought this up, can use her ability on the Straw Hats. So, you know, aging the Straw Hats so they are children or they're so old and frail, they all get shrunken up and whatever, and the arrows, they could just like squeeze out of the arrows, and then Bonnie resets their age. That would be actually really interesting because just like how we saw Chopper and Luffy and Jinbei, we saw Jinbei as a kid and we see Chopper and Luffy as like old men. That'd be really funny if Bonnie uses her ability on the other Strats, like Usopp gets into like his old man form and just and he like manages to get out of the bandages that way. And then also, maybe we could get an answer on what would happen if she used her powers on Brook and made him younger. You know, we all know that with Bonnie's ability, this is just a little bit of a tangent. If you have any injuries, those injuries stay with you. Like, Jinbei did not have that scar when he was a kid, because Oda has drawn him as a kid and he didn't have it. But when Bonnie made him younger during Egghead, he still had the scar. If Bonnie used her ability on, like, Shanks or somebody that was missing a limb, they don't regrow that limb, okay? They just go back to the age that they were then, but they still have all the damage and all the scars and injuries from when they were adults, right? Okay, so it would be interesting of what would happen with Brook. I don't think he would regrow flesh. I think he would just become a smaller skeleton, I assume. I don't know. At any rate, so that could be possible. And also Lilith, if Lilith is with them too, she studied Devil Fruits extensively. She's a Vegapunk, so maybe she might also have a method of getting the Straw Hats out of the Arrow fruit. She might have even recognized the Arrow fruit if it was in the Devil Fruit Encyclopedia, right? I guess we'll see there, okay? So then we have the scene where Franky is just distracting the God's Knights, unloading into Sommers, and then the other Straw Hats get free. That could be Franky's job. That could be Franky what he does, okay? Now, there's another scenario that I would be really interested in seeing, okay? So Franky, of course, does not have unlimited firepower. That would be really cool if he did. But, of course, Franky is powered by delicious, bubbly cola. Sorry, Franky. I think the cola, I know Pepsi did a collaboration with this once, so I think the idea is that the type of cola that Franky does put in himself is Pepsi, but it's Coca-Cola. I'm going with Coca-Cola on this one. Anyway, so Franky might eventually, he's going to run out of cola, right? So we have Killingham that has the ability to pull things out of dreams, and specifically we've seen him pull food items like condiments and salt and things out of dreams. This would also be a bit of a joke. This would just be a comedy chapter with Franky being the main character. But you know, it's been rather serious in One Piece as of late. We need a little bit of levity here, okay? So what if Killingham goes up against Franky and then is fighting him and is just like, I will use my ability to summon up your worst nightmare, right? Now, what if the ability seems the way it works is Killingham puts you to sleep with his magic hypnosis beam. Then whatever you're dreaming about or thinking about is what manifests in the thought bubble, and then Killingham can then pull it out. So he put Sommers to sleep. Sommers dreamed about salt, and then Killingham pulled out the salt, right? Now, the children were already thinking about their worst nightmare because Angie made them do that lesson in school any other day of the week that the Gods Knights would have attacked. Any other time when they were just doing a regular math worksheet or working on like their language lessons or something. No, it had to be the lesson where Angie was like, okay, children, today I'm going to hand out paper and we're all going to sketch out our worst fears in the greatest detail we can imagine, right? You know, there's nothing that could go bad there. So the kids were already thinking about their worst nightmares, and they were already afraid of that. And in the last chapter, we see them back being asleep, and then, you know, the other giants are mentioning demons and devils, and so they start dreaming about demons and devils, and more of them start appearing out of the nightmare fissures. What if Killingham puts Franky to sleep and, like, I will now pull out his worst fear, but then Franky's just dreaming about cola? What else would Franky dream about? I don't know. He dreams about cola and dancing, getting some new Speedos and shipbuilding stuff. Like, I don't know. And so, you know, Killingham's looking at this and just like, I don't know what to do with this. What do I do with this? I guess cola is his worst fear, and he pulls that out. Franky wakes back up, grabs the cola out of Killingham's hand. He's just like, thanks, I needed this. Glug, glug, glug. It's time. Powered up. Now, Killingham did mention that the food and, like, the items that are produced by the dream ability don't have any calories to them, right? But they still taste the same, right? I always assumed the reason that the cola powered up Franky wasn't due to, like, the sugar inside of it or, like, the caloric intake or anything. I always assumed it was the carbonation, right? Like, am I the only one? Maybe I am. Maybe it was, like, the sugar that was powering him the whole time. I always thought it was the bubbliness of the carbonation. That was what's making him go. All right, this is One Piece logic we're talking about here, you know? Cola-powered carbonation engines are, like, on the same level as, like, a nuclear reactor with all the things that Franky can do, but let's go with it, right? So it doesn't matter if there's no calories. If there's bubbles, if there's carbonation, that might be enough to charge Franky back up and then beat the crap out of Killingham. Hey, I'm just saying, man, Franky's been here. He hasn't really done anything. He hasn't gotten in on the action, like, at all at this point. And he's the only Straw Hat up there that can actually do stuff. So, Franky, come on. You're my favorite Straw Hat. I believe in you. You could get some support from Bonnie and Lilith as well. Ripley could be there, too. Ripley could go off to try to save Colin. Oh, that's the other thing, too. So, Franky, because of his modifications to his body, right? Like, how much percentage of his body would you say is cyborg, is robotic, okay? Because we know that his back is his weak point. He couldn't modify that. He still has his brain in there somewhere, but most of Franky's body has been modified now. So what I'm saying is, if Franky was going to try to fight Sommers or save the children and bypass the Thorn ability, right? Like, Franky reaches out his hand to go save the kids. The Thorn stabs him, but that's not his hand. He doesn't have actual arms or hands anymore. He built those. It's not like his real arms or his real hands are inside of the armor. No, those are his arms, right? So maybe it could still do damage to him, but it doesn't matter if those thorns have, you know, armament hockey or whatever. Franky gets stabbed by those thorns. They might not even be able to pierce his body, because Franky's iron body seems to, it depends on who he's fighting and the whole idea behind it, but it might actually be able to block certain attacks just because he's made out of metal and he's not made out of flesh and bone, right? But at any rate, he wouldn't feel anything, right? So let's say Sommers pulls out his whip and he throws it. One scenario is Franky could just grab that shit and break the thorns and they don't pierce his body at all, because that stuff's made out of wapple metal, you know? Franky, you know, goes like all in when it comes to the building materials, right? So he just grabs it and breaks the thorns, like don't even stab him. If they do stab his arms, Franky would be like, oh, that's not good. But at the same time, he's not going to feel any pain. Franky's not going to be like, ow, I've been stabbed by your thorns, that hurts. At least that shouldn't happen, because there's no nerve endings in there, right? He'd just be like, or if there are, Franky could just like flip them off and whatever, and just be like, whatever, I don't feel anything from my arms anymore. Boom. You know, and so Franky actually might end up being a good counter to Sommers. I don't know about Killingham with the whole cola strategy, but Sommers he might be able to go up against for a little while. And if all else fails, ladies and gentlemen, Franky just needs to do a dance. He just needs to do like that dance he did when he landed on Baltimore, you know, with the like the right, left, right, left, right, left, close up of Franky's crotch, right, left, super, you know. He does that shit in front of Emu. I think it doesn't matter. I don't care if Emu's the devil lord that rules over everything. Emu's just going to look at that and be like, what is this? What are you? It's just like, I get that a lot. Right, left. Emu's like, are you a human? Oh, girl, I'm beyond human. It's just like, what? And so, it's just like, it's like that. I just want to see that now. I just want to see Franky trying to distract Emu, and if it would work. Please, God, Oda, I know that's up your alley in terms of comedy. I've been reading this story for a long time, Oda. I know that would be a blast. If nothing else, in an SBS, I might even ask that question directly. It's like, what would have happened if Franky would have tried to distract Emu? How that would? Can you draw Emu? Can you draw Emu's like face, like what? Like that? That would be great. That would be fantastic. Just please have that before the final war, the final battle really gets started here. Like Luffy's group shows up and Loki's there, and they all start fighting Emu. Have Franky have at least one chapter where he shows up and tries to help, and it's kind of funny, and then at the end of that chapter, boom, Luffy shows up in Gear 5th, and maybe Franky and Luffy and Zoro and Sanji can then all fight together. Let's have that at least. I think it could work, okay? All right, so let me know down below on all the different ways that you think, that we know that Franky could fight against the Gods Knights, all right? Yeah, there's options on the table here, right? Thanks for watching, everybody. This will be Tekking signing out. Franky!